presenting on behalf of Greenpeace Aotearoa. So Dr. Norman, thank you for being with the committee. I think you're relatively familiar with how these processes work. So I'll hand over to you for the next 10 minutes.
Ina mana, ina waka, ina reo, e rau rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. No Uropi, oku tūpuna, I tipu ake o ki aihi tarairia. Engari ke tamiki makaurau, taku kāinga. Nō reira ka mihi ki te maunga ko Mongarei, mo te moana ko Waitemata, ko Russel Norman tōku ingoa, ko taku tūranga mahi ki Greenpeace Aotearoa o te Executive Director. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings to all of you on the Select Committee. My ancestors come from Europe. I grew up in Australia. My home is in Auckland, where I acknowledge the mountain Mongarei not far from here, the Waitemata Harbour, where I often go swimming. My name is Russel Norman. I'm the Executive Director of Greenpeace Aotearoa. I'm making this submission on behalf of Greenpeace Aotearoa. Greenpeace is an environment and peace campaigning organisation. It's supported by tens of thousands of New Zealanders, and it's been in Aotearoa, New Zealand for over 50 years. Our analysis is that essentially this bill is an attempt to nullify the treaty, just as Justice Prendergast attempted to nullify the treaty in 1877. It's an attempt to nullify it by removing those rights that were guaranteed to Māori under the treaty. And so we call on the Select Committee to oppose the bill, to reject the bill, and we oppose it for three basic reasons. The first is that by effectively abolishing the treaty, it undermines our ability and other people's ability to protect the environment. And I just wanted to expand a little bit on that. There are many cases across New Zealand, Aotearoa New Zealand, where groups have used Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the principles of the treaty to protect the environment from environmental destruction. That's both Pākehā groups as well as Māori groups. And I just wanted to dig into a recent case, which is the seabed mining case. So there's an Australian mining company called Trans-Tasman Resources based in Sydney. And what Trans-Tasman Resources would like to do is to mine the seabed in the South Taranaki Bight. So that would cause truly immense environmental harm by not only the immediate destruction of the seabed in the many square kilometres that they would mine, but also as the sediment, the underwater sediment spread across the ocean floor, the benthic environment would be smothered over many hundreds of square kilometres. On top of that, the water column would be full of sediment so that filter feeders like pygmy blue whales that live in that area would struggle to feed in that area. So it's an important environmental battle, one of the iconic environmental battles that will determine the future of the natural environment in the oceans of Aotearoa, New Zealand. In the court case that eventually ended up in the Supreme Court, the litigants, which was Greenpeace, but also iwi and hapu groups like Ngāti Ruanui from South Taranaki, we found ourselves the winners in that case. And the mining application by Trans-Tasman Resources, this Australian mining company, was stopped. And there were two basic grounds for us winning that. One was environmental. So obviously this immensely destructive environmental project, the Supreme Court ruled against it just because of its pure environmental destruction. But secondly, there was also treaty grounds. So the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi were breached because of the tikanga of Ngāti Ruanui and others. So in that Supreme Court ruling, the Treaty of Waitangi and the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi that this bill seeks to completely eliminate were fundamental in us being able to protect the moana from this terribly destructive project. So that's the first reason that we oppose this bill to essentially negate the treaty. Secondly, the second reason is kind of a slightly more tactical, which is that in many environmental battles, we form alliances with iwi and hapu up and down the country in order to protect the environment. So, for example, one of the great battles in terms of climate change is the battle around oil and gas exploration. We know from the International Energy Association that we can't afford to burn existing fossil fuels. And so any government that's looking to explore for new fossil fuels is essentially trying to accelerate the climate crisis. In New Zealand, there was a very long battle over which I was involved in and many others, trying to end oil and gas exploration. And our key allies in those battles were iwi and hapu, Te Whanau Apanui, just to name one. And their ability to have rights and have standing in those battles was underpinned by Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the principles of the treaty. So in terms of just those battles, it's tremendously important for us that the treaty is protected. And thirdly, the third reason we're opposed to it, and I think hopefully, and I think the most important really, is it's simply wrong for the Crown to attempt to revoke the treaty and this agreement with tangata whenua without even consulting tangata whenua, and to remove Māori rights. It's a fundamentally wrong approach for the Crown to take. And I think we really should value the treaty as a unique New Zealand invention, if you like. It is a unique New Zealand framework to grapple with our uncomfortable history of colonisation. The treaty, with all its strengths and weaknesses, it has formed a framework in which we as a society have attempted to come to terms with the history of violent colonisation in this country. Now, over time, the meaning of the treaty has evolved, the principles have evolved, as we as a society have matured to face the reality of colonisation and the stealing of land, the violent stealing of land that happened in this country. And anyone who's bothered to read the history of this land will know about the land wars throughout the 19th century, plus all the other confiscations that happened into the 20th century. The British government, the provincial government, used extreme violence to steal land from Māori. This is simply an historic fact. And a nation that refuses to face up its history and to find some kind of complicated justice, which it's always going to be complicated, a nation which can't face its history is a nation that will never grow up. Prendergast said the treaty, Justice Prendergast in 1877, he said the treaty was worthless because it was signed between a civilised nation and a group of savages who were not capable of signing a treaty, and hence it was a simple nullity. Let us actively reject the racism of Prendergast in 1877. Let us actively embrace an Aotearoa which is mature enough to have a truthful conversation about our shared past and our shared future. Te Tiriti o Waitangi provides a framework for that conversation and for us to try to find some degree of justice through that conversation. Simply pretending colonisation never happened does not mean it's going to go away. So we would urge you to reject the bill, both to protect the natural environment, which the Treaty of Waitangi has been an important tool to protect the wonders of this incredible set of islands that we're so lucky to live in, but also so that we can all be part of a mature nation that faces up to its history and tries to find some kind of justice together going forward. That's me.
Thank you, Dr. Norman. Members, probably time for one quick question, if anyone has any questions for Greenpeace. No, there appear to be none around the room. So look, it just falls to me to thank you for your time this afternoon, Dr. Norman. We appreciate the time you've put into the written submission and also for appearing before us this afternoon. It is greatly appreciated.
Kia ora.
We're going to move now.